I want to give you a story that I think is one of the most amazing stories I have heard. It is in a new book called Let It Go, and I want to just read just the flap. On a cold February night in 2007, a devoted father of 4 and a 17-year-old drunk driver both received life sentences. In one violent, devastating instant, both faced a drastically different and uncertain future. But as Chris Williams sat in his demolished vehicle staring at the car that had just caused the death of his wife, his unborn baby, his 11-year-old son, and his 9-year-old daughter, he committed to do something extraordinary. He would forgive. I have the father and the drunk driver in my studio now. The story of these two men is absolutely incredible. It is a story of forgiveness and forgiveness of yourself and a willingness to let it go. And what a powerful story it is. Hello to both of you guys. How are you?
Thanks.
Can we turn on cameras, Mike? Chris, let me start with you. Tell me your side of the story on what happened that night.
So yeah, we're just going out as a family to get a treat. It's kind of late in the evening, so it's dark. We're coming under what's called in Salt Lake, it's the 20th East Underpass, where you actually drop down below a freeway and then you come back up. And as we came down to go into the freeway, there was a pair of headlights just coming at us at freeway speeds, and we didn't have an opportunity to get out of the way, and we were hit. We were basically T-boned.
And you remember looking at your wife and seeing her exhale for the last time?
Oh, absolutely. So right after, I'm aware of what's going on. I mean, certainly there's got to be an element of shock. I'm not feeling the injuries I had sustained, but I was aware enough to desperately check for a pulse on my wife's wrist, and there was none. And I could see that she had an injury on her elbow that wasn't bleeding, and so things started to add up that she was gone. That no amount of CPR or emergency assistance would bring her back.
Then you look in the back seat.
Look in the back seat, then what's happened to my children? And I look back and I see my son Benjamin just kind of leaning against the door, and he looked so very peaceful, as if he's asleep, but I could see a huge gash on his head. But once again, wasn't bleeding. And if you've, cut your head at all, you know that those things bleed a lot. And so just once again, this thought that he too was just absolutely gone. And then as I looked to see my daughter, I mean, she's actually just leaning forward with her hair draped over her eyes, her face. And, I couldn't see any physical injury, but once again, I just had this thought that she too was gone, and that was the extent of it.
How did you just tell me that story? My gosh, I'm sitting here as a dad, and Jeffy's doing the same thing. How did you just tell me that story?
So, I mean, I have a core belief that they live on. I mean, this is a moment where I'm dealing with, looking at their bodies that they've left here, but in a sense, they're entering a place that I call paradise, right? That just is a place of peace. And as I've reflected on that moment so many times, and the peace that came when I decided in that car to let it go, it has created this foundation in my life that I can talk about it and reflect on it and remember my wife and my kids in a way that reinforces that they're not gone, that they live on.
You know what? We all understand heaven, and we all have that belief, but that's amazing. That's amazing. Tell me what happened with you. What was your recollection of things that
My recollection, to be honest, I don't remember much about the accident itself. From what I remember,
You were 17?
I was 17 at the time,
Yep.
in high school, Skyline High School, and I was just a normal kid who liked to rebel, and I was at an acquaintance's house. I had some alcohol. I had some friends I was going to meet up with, and they called me and let me know that they were going to be at Baskin Robbins. So I went there in hopes to find them. They weren't there, so I called them and asked where they were. They were somewhere else. So they said, come over and meet us. And I just felt tipsy at the time, but the last thing I remember is pulling out of the Baskin Robbins. And the next thing I know, I'm walking away from my overturned vehicle, and I'm looking back and trying to figure out what happened. All I know is something terrible happened. And so
when you found out what had happened. What do you remember of that?
I remember the first time that I found out I was being questioned. The detective had asked me if I remember what happened. I said no. He asked me if I wanted to talk about what happened. I said no, and he said, "You want to know what happened?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You've caused an accident that's killed 3 people, and one of them was a pregnant mother." And I mean, at the time I was too intoxicated to even understand what kind of weight those words held.
I ask you the same thing. How did you just tell me that story? This is an amazing thing for you to let the death go, for you to let the mistake go, and then to come together. I encourage everyone within the sound of my voice to read this story. It's available on Amazon.com, available in bookstores. It's called Let It Go. I encourage you to read it. I don't remember the first time I heard your story, and we're going to talk about it tonight on television, about you guys meeting for the first time and you coming together and what you were carrying around and what you did as quote, the victim. There's no victim in you. There's no victim in you. And it's remarkable. We'll talk about that tonight. You remember when the judge was talking to you because you were a minor.
Right.
And he said to you, do something with your life. Did he not?
No, he did.
Yeah. What did he say to you?
He told me I had a gift, that he could see something in me, and that he knew that I would make a change in this world somehow. So he told me to do something about it.
Did you know what to do before, Chris?
I had no idea. No.
And here you are together. What is your relationship like now? What do you have as a relationship?
I think it's fantastic. I mean, I see the same thing in Cameron. And so, I mean, being with him, it's, there's a wonderful expectation for the future. It's almost like I get to kind of watch him fulfill, I think, the expectation that the judge saw as well, is that he has an incredibly bright future. He's an incredibly talented individual. And I think that's really this message of redemption. I mean, had I not let that go, I would have missed out on this opportunity to do that.
What are you going to do? Do you know yet? What is it that you're...
I know that my specialty is helping people. I mean, I love speaking to groups, but I think it's more on an individual basis. A lot of people that I've come across are kind of in a hard situation,
mm-hmm.
and I feel like I have more leeway than any other person because of what I've been through, and I can relate to them and help them get through that hard time.
I urge you to watch tonight at 5 o'clock on GBTV, and I urge you to get the book Let It Go by Chris Williams. I am a huge fan of both of you, and I thank you for being on the program, and we'll see you this afternoon.
Well, thank you.
Thanks. That's 5 o'clock on GBTV, and please read this book.